Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you're watching us from, this is Civic Space TV. My name is Douglas Trekonen, and today we are having an exclusive 360 interview with one of our own, a gentleman that has been part of us, those from among us, as we would say, by the names of Honorable Kidega Moses Ogenrwot, who is an aspirant for the position of Northern Uganda Youth Member of Parliament. You're most welcome.
Thank you, Drake. I am most pleased to be here this morning or this afternoon, and of course to the viewers, I said to them, Mingoni, Utie, Mabe, Mata, and I'm happy. Thank you for having me. It's nostalgic, rather, to be here, because this boardroom or this space really is what partly made me into who I am today. So it's always a pleasure to be back.
Definitely. Yeah. Speaking of this space as something that made you, I think I've also had these conversations way back in 2021, 2020, when I appeared on my first ever episode on the channel, and you are the host of the show. Of course, it's definitely nostalgic, seeing that now you're taking on a new journey, a journey that you're going to represent voices of the people. Yeah. Very happy to have you here, my brother.
It's a pleasure once again. And of course, to me, the transition of this particular, of course, eventually we shall talk about it, the Youth Roundtable, from under a tree at CCG to eventually a four-corner, beautiful and nice-looking studio. To me, it's also a tremendous journey that I'm happy to have worked with CCG and the Youth Roundtable as well.
Definitely. Now, speaking of transition, we now transition to you, and we understand the journey that you want to take at this point. Kidega Moses Ogenrwot, people know you as, of course, a leader. They've seen you in UNSA, they've seen you in the National Youth Council, but they would also want to know the story of this young man that has, of course, moved a journey that has not been in the public domain, but a journey that you only know. So I'll just start with a simple question of asking you to tell us who Kidega Moses Ogenrwot is.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I want to do two things. I'm going to reverse engineer the question, but also respond to it as well.
Yeah.
Kidega Moses Ogenrwot, what brings me to the studio this morning or this afternoon is basically two things. Is that young person who has to walk from Namave every single day to and from, and has to work for about 10 hours and is paid 3,000 per day. That young girl who has to drop out of primary or secondary school because their reproductive health is undermined by the fact that they cannot afford a sanitary towel of 2,000 Uganda shillings. That young boy or young girl who has found himself in Saudi Arabia because they cannot find opportunity for employment here in Uganda, and their human rights situation is continuously wanting when they're out of the country. That young pupil who joined UPE but could not make it to USE because of the challenges that come with management of the education system, and has found themselves having to drop out. That young person whose business has failed to make or see the first birthday because of the tax regime and because of how expensive credit is the young person who has brought me to studio this morning. And we hope to do all this by consolidating the gains of the NRM and of course President Museveni, and equally be a part of Uganda's National Development Plan 4 that seeks to transform Uganda's economy into a tenfold, from 5 billion to 50 billion USD. So that's what brings me here. But the story of Kidega Moses is the story of any other young person out there. I was born and raised in Acholi. I was born in 1996, and for those of you who collect history very well, you know that that period was when the Lord's Resistance Army and Lakwena was causing turmoil in Acholi. And that's when we were born, at the height of all of it. And to me, the story that makes the difference in my life, that builds a spirit of resilience, a spirit of determination, a spirit of looking beyond our fears and looking at possibility, is that particular moment for me, my childhood story. So born into a conflict-driven region as a young boy, I remember we used to walk from the outskirts of town to the town center. We are basically night commuters as children. And we would, if we got close to the bus park and you saw some bit of semblance of people gathering, you would have the perception that now here it is safe, I can sleep here. And we would leave the town, so we would leave the outskirts of town by the time you live in a group, by the time you reach town, the group has thinned down. And most times my mom would come after us, or our parents would come after us. So first, the children, we would go fast. We would leave like maybe like 2, 3 p.m. so that by 5, you're in the town, spend the night there. And then in the morning, you're back into the farm, and then cycle in, cycle out. So that really is what I would say defines my childhood story. Then, of course, eventually into the church and the Catholic Church, rather, and their contribution towards my also early childhood days. But to me, that is it. And I grew up knowing every child to be Omera, because eventually, fast forward, my parents were able to get a small...
Maybe for context for the viewers, Omera means
brother. True. Yeah. So eventually, my dad was a very proactive agriculturist. He used to run something under Aquano Enterprises. So he used to supply the UPDF then. So I think he made some small money out of that. And eventually he bought a small house in town. But that house ceased to be a family house. It became a community house because the doors were open. Every evening, children who would be coming from the outskirts of town, they would just come. And I grew up with so many young children that I even didn't ever get to know them. But simply because our parents, having gone through what we had gone through, when opportunity struck them and they were able to get better placement in town, they opened the doors of our home. So our childhood experience was every single evening, I would have either 15 or 5 boys coming in, new, some who had spent the previous night with us and had come back, and it was just like that. I recall their names very well. There was Pere, I recalled them like it was yesterday. So that's my childhood story. And of course, my parents, and to whom I'm very grateful, because they nurtured us into people who appreciate community service, people who appreciate the values of togetherness, you know. And I recall my dad would tell me that, Moses, when people convene under under a campfire to watch the moon, it is not because they cannot see the moon from their homes. It's simply because when you come together, you're able to share ideas, share the values of community, and together build something that works for all of us.
Sure.
Yeah, so really that is it. My mom was basically a staunch Christian and a traditional African woman, and yeah, she instilled discipline in us. She instilled discipline in us. Yeah. Those utensils, like I don't know, the sandals and all, were her best friends. If you got off the line, should crack the whip on you. So
definitely, that
yes,
that sounds like a typical African mom. Just now that you've told us the foundation that your family has had in your making, in terms of instilling values in you, but also shaping you to the man that you are today. Needless to say, you also made mention of the church having an impact in your education journey. Let's just quickly walk through that, because I think that will also inform us in terms of understanding the aspects of Kidega Moses Ogenrwot that we are not aware of. Just maybe quickly walk us through how the church has been fundamental in your education journey, but also at what stage were you at, which in your primary education, maybe secondary education, and how was the church very fundamental in that process?
I mean, very true. And the church picked interest in us as a family because really my mother, she was very active in church activities, be it fundraiser for maybe constructing an extension for the parish priest, be it, I don't know, whatever it was, she was very active, not because she had the money, but simply because she wanted to see the church grow.
That aspect of Ubuntu.
Of Ubuntu, that I am because we are. So her proactiveness in the church, and besides that, she was also a part-time nurse in a community clinic, but really she spent most of her time doing church activity. So that's how the church picks interest in us, and eventually the church, I think, had an arrangement with Bishop Angelo, Negri Primary School. So I did kindergarten 3, I didn't do kindergarten 1 and 2, I did 3, then straight away went to Bishop Angelo Negri Primary.
You were sharp.
No, it is simply because I think my parents also saw education then as a luxury, but also we didn't really have the resources.
Just as a joke, you know when we're joining nursery school, they'd say, touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're able to exceed that limit.
No, I was not actually.
Yeah.
So eventually, I joined Bishop Angelo, and as you can hear the name of the school, it's a typical Catholic school. So I think the school had an arrangement with Holy Rosary Parish. So that's how I get myself as a student of Bishop Angelo Negri Primary School. I joined my primary one, but you know, it was such a challenging time because I recall one of my teachers, Mr. Okwera, I think, used to teach us mathematics, and he would narrate to us how children are being abducted. And if you know the location of Negri Primary School, it's almost at the border
close
of
to Amoro.
Amoro, literally. So we used to hear stories of children being abducted and all those things. And the story of Lukwena, it was traumatizing.
Context, Lukwena means rebels.
Yeah. So I would say, even school, my early primary school days, we lived in fear. But the school, being Catholic founded, it kept on instilling values of belief and faith in us. So somehow we managed to go through, I managed to go through primary education. Eventually, I scored a good first grade. So the church once again felt it prudent that I deserve support, and they went ahead to seek partnership with another Catholic founded school in St. Joseph's, Nagalama, where I joined my secondary education. But
just before you transition to St. Joseph's Nagalama, I want us to pick out aspects of leadership in your primary school, because that also informs the person that you are today.
All right. Two things. One is the church and their contribution towards my education journey, and I'm forever grateful to them. So now, in primary school at Bishop Angelo Negri, I was not really proactive. And by the way, I grew up as a timid guy. And I'll tell you this, when I joined secondary school and university, I was a timid guy, and more so when I came to Kampala for my for my secondary education, I was really timid, coming from a background of, they would see you as coin, you know, like we would have all those subtle
stereotype about guys who came from
exactly.
North,
they would refer to you as coin and what, so you'd feel a bit
it affected your esteem.
Uncomfortable. My esteem, I was affected. But really, at primary level, I never offered myself that much. But I loved sports. I loved sports very much, and I played football. And my elder brother was also at Bishop Angelo Negri Primary School, and I think through that he managed to get me. When I joined P1, he managed to influence the coach to also co-opt me into the school team. But eventually, at some level, I remember I became captain of the junior football team. That's at primary. We played Coca-Cola competitions. We did not win really, but that was my aspect of leadership. It was mainly about organizing the team. Of course, young boys as we were, passionate. Okay, like, do we all have playing boots? Is the ball ready for training? Has the coach come? That was basically my responsibility, organizing the team and ensuring that we train. And of course, at times of competition, have we things like welfare, has the team eaten and what? So I think that also along the way affected my performance as a player, because I ended up taking more administrative responsibility than being a footballer myself. So the Kidega who began off as a Paul Pogba in the midfield ended up as I don't know, because I was doing more administrative and supporting the team, and forgot now to do my own training and things like that. So
you somehow became a mini coach.
Exactly. So I became a mediocre in my talent, but I was glad that I was fulfilled in hoping the team perform better, even when I was now not as good as anymore, to be able to actively play on the football pitch. So really that was basically it.
So now let's transition quickly to your secondary school journey, because I know, I think also in your secondary school, I'm quite informed you are very, very involved in playing football, but also in the leadership of the football ranks in your secondary school. Quickly walk us through that leadership journey in your secondary school. That will also help us understand, where do you exactly get involved in the other aspect of leadership that many young people would have gone through in the process.
Absolutely. So I joined St. Joseph's Nagalama, and the incident for me are twofold. One is with sports leadership, where I again was somehow I found myself being the captain of the junior football team. But the important thing for me there is that I think in senior 3, the team qualified. I don't know, but there was some competition, and the team qualified to go and play in Italy. Now, so that competition had very strict conditions. Conditions on height and on weight. Now, me being a tall guy, I didn't qualify because it was, I think, under 14, and the people who were organizing the competition believed that a 14-year-old child cannot be above this height. Now, me, a tall boy, that's how I missed out on going to Italy to play football. But really, even in that, I was more than happy to really support those who went and really ensure that they trained and all these things. And when they came back from Italy, they came back with bicycles, and I think I got an Inter Milan shirt, I remember. But importantly is now eventually the actual leadership interest begins to come in. And I remember I offered myself to be deputy dome father of St. Jude House. But I don't know, for some reason, I did not eventually contest, because you know how secondary politics is really. They would just call you to the room of the headmaster and say, no, it has to go with this person, and it is done. You won't continue. So I remember the gentleman I was contesting with, or I had showed interest with, was a one Katunji. Yeah, so I recall being called by the house patron, Mr. Senkai, and saying, you know what, Kidega, you're already the captain of the junior team, and what, so let's give chance to Katunja. So that was the negotiation, and I said, okay, it's cool. I mean, I'll have chance to lead again, maybe at senior 5 or something. So that's how my leadership journey at all level really was. I didn't really get elected, but my first election, I think, was in senior 5, when I joined Maryland High School. And it was difficult because now Maryland High School is not a Catholic founded school. Now the church, I think, had reached a point where, in my senior 3, are they called Archbishop or the parish priest was moved from Gulu to Lira. So we lost some favor in terms of the scholarship from the church. So when I finished senior 4, the church was not available anymore to carry us forward to senior 5. So I remember it became a bit challenging because there was not much at home. My parents were really peasants, and it became challenging. But the story for me there, as you asked, is the leadership aspect. So in senior 5, because of the urge and all these things, I contest to become mess prefect. So eventually I'm elected mess prefect, and for anyone who has gone to high school, you know the mandate and the difficulty that comes with organizing people, more so in terms of food.
Definitely.
I mean, children are, not children, but students are hungry. There's probably a lot of sunshine. It's the point where students get to congregate together at the same time, and under not the most pleasant circumstances. They are hungry.
Kids are hungry, and they have to eat. And they have to eat. And as the mess prefect, you need to ensure that there's order.
There's order in the line, but also that everyone gets what to eat. All right, and that the food being served is being served quickly to allow them go back for their either afternoon classes or evening classes. So it was quite a difficult job. So I found myself very intermingled with student issues, because really most of the issues of students rotate around food and welfare. So I was a very busy student leader, and that of course at some point affected my education. I think I scored 14 points, but if I was not a prefect, I think I could have scored much more, because my time was more committed to now, the cafeteria and all these things. So I was mess prefect, but I remember I supported very strongly the head boy, Mr. Marvin Kahuma. And the one instant that Marvin will of course testify is that when, of course, I can't call these campaigns, but when he was running for head prefect, I remember I went to the computer lab, sweet talked to the computer lab attendant. He gave me, I think, maybe some 30 reams of paper. I went to Marvin's Facebook account, downloaded his picture, and printed them on about 50, how are they called?
on the plain paper.
On the plain papers.
Yeah.
And Marvin woke up.
Was it black and white?
Black and white, of course, from Facebook. Yeah. So Marvin wakes up, he finds these pictures all over the school, and he's like, "Oh my God, who did this?" Yeah. I did not tell him, but we just said, man, I think we have support. Like, I think we are doing well, you know. So, and I think it goes back to me. I am okay with people leading.
You're okay being a kingmaker.
I am okay being at the background and helping people to lead and helping people to transform society. So at that point, I even didn't take credit for what I had done to help Marvin in his bid for head prefect.
So did Marvin eventually win head prefect?
No, he did not, because the school decided that because Marvin had come from King's College Budo, so the school felt like we needed someone who had been there from senior 1 to senior 4. So that's how Ewan Allen, who is now, I think now he has a rank in the SFC. I keep on talking to him. So that's how Ewan Allen becomes head prefect. Marvin is then denied the chance. So Marvin then becomes sanitary prefect. Yeah, sanitary prefect. And yeah, fast forward, we are both in leadership together. But to me, the moral story is that I didn't mind not taking credit for what I had done for him. I only was concerned about us winning the election and him being head prefect, and us, you know, together being able to introduce 1 or 2 good things in the school. So yeah, so that is basically my leadership at the at school and high school, really. So
in all your leadership journey, we see it's kind of peculiar that you are mostly involved in the leadership from the sports perspective, and then later on in your HSC, we see the Kidega we know now, starting to come out. The
elective politics Kidega.
Definitely. That's the Kidega we know. Of course, you now got involved in elective politics, elected mess prefect, and I think you made mention to me sometime you were later on upgraded to Chief Justice.
Yes, absolutely.
Because of course,
the circumstances.
Yes, the circumstances and the good work that you were doing in school. And that at that point maybe sparked a little bit of more interest in leadership, I presume. Let's now go to your university. I'm aware you hold 2 degrees. Soon to graduate from a career with law. So let us understand the first degree, the journey, and what were most important. What the most interesting aspect we want to pick out is the course you were doing. Did you pursue leadership in that first degree? And then you tell us what happened in that process and what stood out for you in that first degree, the aspects that were very fundamental in informing the man that you're becoming and the man that you are today.
Yeah, wonderful. I think my first experience joining university is that, so I score 14 points and I get admitted on government scholarship for software engineering.
I think you could have scored more. But of course, I think if you watch Spider-Man, there's a line that they say, with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely.
And I think the responsibility had a little portion of
Absolutely. And of course, to the ardent Christians, they would say, those to whom much is given, much is expected. But so Makerere University had introduced the software engineering course, I think 2 years prior to us joining. And the idea was the whole IT and the whole digital transformation and all these things. So they were trying to have as many students that partake of this new course. So that's why I think, because with 14, ideally, I don't think I would qualify for government scholarship, but because the course was a new course and they were trying to have as many students take it up, that's how I find myself joining Makerere University as a software engineering student. And my first day at Makerere University, I recall I used what is now the Eastern Gate. Of course, I came alone from Gulu. My parents simply packed my things and said, our son, we wish you well. The good thing is the NM government has given you free education. Please go. And just to go back a little bit, is that at some point I attended Lakwana Primary School, and that is a UPE school. At some point they charged, story for another day, but at some point I also went to UPE. So I joined Makerere University and my parents are like, son, go to school. And good thing is the government has paid for you and just go and study. So I come with my bag at the bus park. Then I get, I think, a boda. It brings me to Makerere and of course I get in. And the good thing is I had my admission letter with me. So when I reached the gate, I just showed it to the askari. and he read Livingstone Hall. He said, oh, just walk there. So he gave me good direction. So eventually I find myself at Livingstone Hall. And of course, there was a team waiting for us, the warden and all that. So we get inducted, and of course, I joined Livingstone Hall. Fast forward, I contest for deputy speaker of Livingstone Hall. That is in my year one. All right. That election did not go well exactly because there was a second year student who had been, I think, a leader before and was coming back to contest as deputy speaker. So they said, you know what, since you're still in first year and all that, perhaps you could give chance to Darlington to be deputy speaker, then next year you will. But I was stubborn.
Just on that point,
I insisted and said,
how, because I know...
This is not the second time I'm being asked to...
of course, to step down. And how do you oftentimes handle losing? Because I know our viewers out there, there are those ones who are terrible losers, who are not comfortable being told, step aside, let someone else, take the mantle. Yeah.
First and foremost, I don't believe that in a process such as a political journey, there is losing. There is winning high, there is winning low. So, but also it's an opportunity to learn, because I can assure you, you don't remain the same.
True.
The moment you offer yourself for leadership, the experience, the challenges that you're exposed to don't leave you the same. So for me, I always took it in good faith. I took it as, okay, it is not yet my time will come. And for as long as my time has not yet come, I will genuinely clap for other people and cheer them on and support them until my time comes. So really, it didn't take a toll on me losing, because I insisted and said, you know what, I won't contest. If I lose, I lose, but I won't contest for deputy speaker. So eventually I lost. I lose by 2 votes, but the process really made me appreciate that I think there's a burning desire in me that I don't want to just be in society like anyone else. I want to be able to, there's a bigger calling for me. I derive fulfillment, I derive passion, I derive a sense of great accomplishment by being able to know that there's someone out there who is influenced positively by my actions. That this student will never get to know who Kidega Moses is, but if I fight against an unfair tuition policy and tomorrow they have the ability to access Makerere University, that pride alone makes me go to bed at night and say, I am fulfilled. I have made my contribution. So yeah, that's how I have always perceived leadership. So I eventually lose. I don't become deputy speaker of Livingstone Hall, but then eventually I become president of my college, and that is courses, and as a software engineering student. Then later on I become chairperson to the Council of College Presidents. And to me, these were bigger and bigger responsibilities in the hierarchy of students' leadership at Makerere University, because we now often found ourselves having discussions with the Vice Chancellor and trying to negotiate for issues that affect the student welfare. I remember as a leader in Livingstone Hall, we managed to successfully scrap off the idea of meal cards. Government students were being given meal cards and they were being literally forced to eat food from Africa Hall. And the quality of food was often at times very unwanting, all right? And they would either serve you the same food over and over again, or if they're changing, the quality is not that good. So students kept on complaining. So as student leaders, then I recall we made a strong point to the extent that we had a food strike. A food strike. I remember, unfortunately, sometime at lunchtime, as leaders, we went to the dining hall and said, today there is no food. There is simply no food. Anyone who has come to eat, there is no food. Yet, in fact, there was food inside. So eventually we, of course, being students and very rowdy. As the leaders, we mobilized, and the food that was served, we got it and poured it. I recall it was beans. We got the whole thing and just poured it to send a message to the administration that we deserve better. And the students who are on government scholarship should not be treated as though they are mere fugitives, as though they are beggars. So that moment, that food strike was a turning point for the leaving out allowance for government students. Because from that point henceforth, the university now began to give government students their leaving out allowance. They would give you money, you choose how you're going to feed yourself, but not forcing you that you must eat from this hole, you must eat from here, the quality of food notwithstanding. So that as a student leader in my hall of residence was a revolution. And up to date now, as we speak, government students get living out allowance. They are not subjugated to going to eat from Africa or Nkuruma or wherever it is. So, but also, some of the things that we also were able to do is that as college president, I noticed that there was a gap. There was no umbrella body that brought together the Council of College Presidents. So under my regime as college president of courses, we innovated the idea that let us create the Council of College Presidents that brings together the college presidents. And as we speak today, the Students' Guild Constitution has adopted formally in its laws the Council of College Presidents. This began as an idea under my regime. And I remember I reached out to Professor Bazeo, who was the then Deputy Vice Chancellor, and asked him to be our patron. I remember he gave us office space, and today the Council of College Presidents has been incorporated into the Students' Guild, and it is now part of the structures. Then it was just college presidents independently. So I think at every level that I've had chance to lead, I've always tried to innovate. I have not sat back and become comfortable. I've always thought about what more can I do? Where is the gap? I don't want to be complacent about situations where I believe I can do something about it. So that's my basically leadership journey. But maybe I'm sure you'd ask that Makerere University was known for strikes and you know all these things. And I was very active in those strikes, I must tell you. Very active. I remember the strike that where I hanged my boots officially and said, no, I think I'm done. Was the 2018 Fees Must Fall that led to the closure of the university. The Fees Must Fall was a campaign that we ran against the 60% tuition increment. Against the 15% tuition increment. The university adopted a policy that every academic year there will be a 15% increment on the tuition that you pay. Can you imagine? So we said, but wait, guys, in 5 years, our tuition will be what? Because 15% times 5 years, that is 75. But in how many years are those? 15. In 7 years, the tuition would have increased by 100%. So we said, guys, no. In 7 years, we will not be here, but our siblings will be coming to Makerere University. Our daughters, cousins in the future will come to Makerere University. We cannot walk out of Makerere University and leave things like this. So the Fees Must Fall campaign was where the hells broke down. And, you know, we campaigned and we striked, and eventually the university listened. And as we speak today, the 15% tuition increment was halted. So to me, that in my leadership journey just tells me that I always desire to make a positive impact. Whether I'm doing it at an individual level or I'm doing it collectively with a group of people, I always want to see that leadership is meaningful. Right. It is not about titles that you hold. And no wonder, as you will see later on, I've never really gone for the positions with titles. I've always wanted to just be able to be in part of a team that offers leadership and part of a team that is able to say, we should take this direction. Yeah.
All right. So from that is where now we see you getting involved in UNSA.
Yeah.
After your run at university, we see you picking interest in UNSA. And of course, you go for a position not president of UNSA. Absolutely. But hold a reasonable position in UNSA. And also at the same time, after UNSA, we see you holding a reasonable position in National Youth Council. So why this trend? Just walk us through that journey, and then we get into your, of course, Makerere University and why law, and then we can come to the big fish right now.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. So for UNSA, I ran for Secretary for National Affairs, not President. And I think for two reasons. I have always, like I've said already, is that I believe at simply having a seat at the table. Once I have a seat at the table, I can influence the direction that the table takes. I don't need to have that particular chair on the table. I just need a seat. And as National Affairs Secretary, indeed, my influence and the things I was able to do speaks for itself. So, but the very unique thing about my UNSA bid is that I eventually become the candidate who scored the most number of votes in the election. I recall our election was in Kisubi, St. Mary's College, Kisubi, And after the election, I remember the then deputy ISO director, Kano Katabazi, called me and said, but who is this young gentleman who has managed to make it to a 14-member executive of UNSA as an outlier, but also really scoring all these number of votes. So I then I think get the attention of the deputy director ISO then, and yeah, he just calls me and just have a cup of tea, and you know, he appreciates me for being a resilient young man.
Was that the point you got brought into the
into the NIM? Good question, good question. Because as a matter of fact, you know, university politics was mainly about, you know, either your UID or no, back then it was UID really. Yes. So to be honest, UID groomed most of us who went to Makerere University. So you're UID product. I am a UID product of Makerere University. So, and you know the quality that UID breeds, more so for university politics. And but also you know that President Museveni and all these prominent leaders were at some point either UID or UPC youth wing. So, yes. But so fast forward, UNSA, then I think that point I began to see, oh wait, NRM and
they're putting your brain some ideas
together. So, but I was still a very proactive and vocal guy, because you recall our UNSA was 2019, 2020. So COVID-19 happened in 2020 March. So that was less than 2-3 months into our term of office. So it means our entire office was now going to be about dealing with the COVID-19 situation. The students who had gotten stranded, how do we continue with education, e-learning? We found ourselves dealing with a very new and different situation. And we didn't have much capacity. But the one thing I recall I did is I made the first media appearance on Urban TV. When the news about the stranded students broke, I was the champion of that news. I was the champion of that clarion call, that there are students who are stranded in their hostels and government is distributing relief items outside and forgetting that there are students who are stranded. So that campaign then begins. We advocate. Eventually, we meet the Right Honorable Prime Minister, and of course, this evidence is there. We meet the Right Honorable Prime Minister, by then Ruakana Rugunda, then the Minister of State for General Duties, the then Honorable Margaret Ogenrwot, and then eventually leading to us meeting Honorable Balam, where we get relief items for the university students. And of course, there is pictures everywhere of us, or of me and the team moving around the region, most of the northern region, to Gulu University and to Arwai, Muni, and we distributed food items to students who were stranded there. And because you recall, public transport was cut off and all these things. So students were literally stranded. So, but we managed to successfully distribute food items to them. And really, we gave them a chance at survival in the COVID-19 period. But also, to me, the most important success that we registered as UNSA was reinstating the higher education students loan scheme. Government in 2020 took a decision to stop recapitalization of the higher education students loan scheme, and we said no way. There are 14,000 students who have benefited from this government program. Cutting it without explanation, without a transition plan, without offering them another solution, we thought would be jeopardizing and discriminating, and eventually making education almost inaccessible. So I recall, again, we put up a good fight, and the Minister of Education took a decision to cabinet, and eventually the students' loan scheme, as we speak today, is being financed, I think, 1 trillion per financial year. I don't now know the figures anymore, but the students' loan scheme is up and running, and students get to apply for this loan every year, and they pay it at a much more later stage. So I think that was, for me, an achievement, but also in terms of institutional building of UNSA, is that, if you recall, UNSA was a turmoil institution. A new group would come and they'd want to sack the incumbent executive secretary. And that ES would serve for a period of 1 year. When a new group comes, they'd also sack that ES. So we thought that there was no continuity in the institution, because if you have the person who is supposed to be the administrative head being sacked at the mercy and whims of the executive, then there is no continuity, and therefore you affect the performance of the institution. So what we did as the 31st UNSA NEC was to give the ES a 3-year contract. The ES of UNSA today, as we speak, is still serving on the premise of the contract that we gave him in 2021. A 3-year contract. Okay, I think now it has expired, maybe they renewed it, but you see, we saw that there is need for continuity. We cannot have this continuous back and forth of, a regime comes with their own ES and the institution simply cannot operate. So I think also that in terms of institutional building, but also maybe lastly, is that we secured office space for UNSA as well. And also I think really that's what I can, in the 1 year that we had, we did that eventually to the National Youth Council.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where I want us to go. So where does National Youth Council come in? So
as I'm still serving on the UNSA executive, there is a call that is made by the Electoral Commission about the National Youth Council. But also because I drew a lot of inspiration from former UNSA leaders like Honorable Lillian Abe, Honorable Dan Fred Kidega, I picked interest in their leadership journey, and I got to realize that after UNSA, they transitioned into the National Youth Council. And Honorable Lillian was actually the sitting Youth Council chairperson at the time I had joined UNSA. So of course I drew inspiration and said, oh, okay, meaning I can offer myself at a much more higher level beyond the students' politics. So I eventually go to my village, contest in the Youth Council, village, parish, sub-county, district, eventually to running as Secretary for Labor Affairs in the National Youth Council. And you'd ask myself, why Labor Affairs?
Of course, and I think,
why not chairperson?
I think earlier on you told us, of course, your interest in being okay with being led.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think this has still manifested itself in National Youth Council.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know why, I've always chosen the most controversial and most difficult things to do. Because labor, the biggest issue young people face today is unemployment. Let's face it, all right? And here I am saying that I want to be the secretary in charge of unemployment, or the secretary in charge of the issue that young people grapple with the most today. I think was me, I think biting more than I could chew, but that to me just reflects that I have always had the desire not to settle for the simple and easy things to do, but rather going for responsibility that will allow me to force myself to go to work, to force myself to think about how do we address this issue.
Okay.
Because being labor secretary, you're dealing with the most complex issue, which is unemployment.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, let us now move the conversation, because, of course, you also registered significant success, though that we have people who will come and offer critiques on the NYC of 2021-2026.
Yeah.
But that's a conversation for another day. Let us now look into, of course, NYC, and after NYC, we see you joining law school.
Yeah.
Because why law? Why did you choose law? Yeah. And then today you want to run and represent the people of the youth of Northern Uganda in Parliament.
Yeah.
Did you foresee a possibility of using your legal skills in the floor of Parliament?
Absolutely. Drake, I'm going to ask you to remind me later on to make a response to our term of office in the Youth Council. I think it's important that we give an account to the audience.
Yeah.
But law school. So eventually I complete software engineering. I graduated in 2021. Now, in that period, I am now transitioning into the National Youth Council. So I joined the Youth Council, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be here for 5 years in the Youth Council. I'm going to be able to serve young people in my capacity, but I need to really now begin to fulfill some of my childhood desires and dreams. And one of those was to be a lawyer. That was inspired by two things. One is that I underwent sort of, you'd say, absence of a state or injustice, and that is my childhood experience, really. But also, if you look at the post-recovery of Northern Uganda, the introduction of programs like NUSAF, the issues around the transitional justice system, the Matoput and all these things, I felt like I needed to be a part of this post-recovery journey for my people.
Now we're having a conversation.
So I asked myself,
we're having a conversation. Personally, I'm very interested in transitional justice,
Okay.
TJ.
Yeah.
All of us hail from northern Uganda, Gulu in particular, who are, of course, born in conflict and post-conflict community.
Absolutely.
And we saw some of our parents got involved in the process.
Yeah.
And your interest in law in regards to serving the community is fundamental in steering the kind of, in informing the kind of individual that you are. Someone who not only thinks about himself, but thinks about the greater good of the community in looking at the people, or the young people in northern Uganda now, because right now the community is grappling with post-traumatic stress of the war, and which is affecting young people. And I know in your manifesto you capture that aspect, which we shall look into.
Absolutely.
So, as Kidega Moses, who is looking at, you see, of course, great power comes great responsibility. You know, thinking I must do law because I want to help my people back in the community. Quite interesting. And let us now understand that deeper. You're now trying to know the why, besides the people. Why?
The why. And you know what? My passion was met with a great shock. In my first year at law school, I am in a class of criminal law. I recall the professor very well. The professor asked all of us, why are we at law school? He asked all of us. He said, today I am not going to teach. Everyone will tell me why they are at law school. And the response I've given you here, I rose up with a lot of vigor and passion. I said, Professor, I am here because my people experienced war, and now we are dealing with the post-war conflict situation.
Consequences.
And I think that if I am a lawyer, I'll be able to offer myself to really like argue some of these reparation conversations and all those things. So I spoke in that perspective. Oh my God, I was met with the reality. The gentleman told me that actually he rubbished whatever I had said. He said, lawyers, you're supposed to make money. And really, for this, I will mention him, that Dr. Kasimbaz. Kasimbaz. He said, lawyers, you're supposed to make money. Forget about those things. I said, God, I am here driven by passion, because I know that once I'm a lawyer and I go before the courts of law, I'll be able to defend my people and make a case for them, and probably even at some point sue government.
But now you're the government. How do you see it?
So, you know, and demand that government repays or, you know, compensates the people who had lost their property, lost their cattle, and lost their land, and lost all these things. So I definitely was met with that shock. But to his dismay, that did not break my resolve. I continued in my pursuit because I believed that, and of course, at the backdrop of that, I had now picked interest in the Dominic Ongwen case.
But
ICC,
Moses, let's face it, lawyers are supposed to That's the reality. You can't keep up with the pomp if you don't have money.
You lawyers are so bougie. You have a very expensive lifestyle. For us, we are the lawyers for the community. We are the Ubuntu lawyers. So eventually, I convinced myself that, you know what, I am here to stay because I want to help my people. So I go through the law school process. And eventually, as of May this year, I completed my LLB, and I'll be waiting for graduation. But I am more convinced now, more than ever, that I did the right thing. Because in the 4 years of serving in the National Youth Council, I was able to also go back to school and attain knowledge that will help me serve my people better. But also, you know that Parliament is about making laws. Legislation. So what laws are you going to make if you don't know what laws exist, if you don't know what is the foundation, what is the philosophy of these laws? You know that in the law of jurisprudence, we are taught how laws are made and how laws should be a driving force for positive change. And
law is a reflection of the spirit of the people.
Oh, absolutely. You know? So, and I feel and I'm convinced that I took the right decision. But eventually, for me, the law is a tool that I hope to use to really help my people back home. Be it in terms of representative suits, be it in terms of class actions, of course, our
generally public interest
litigation, really. Issues of compensation, issues of reparation, and all these things. And for example, right now, the Balaro question, it is, yes, it is people-centric, but also there's a legal dynamic attached to it. So you can see that
it has a land question.
It has a land question attached to it, and how the customary land in Acholi has been that way, but also the Balalo who have now come and settled. All those things, there's a legal dimension to it. So if you don't have an appreciation of the law, you might fail to dissect that situation. So that just is a testament that the law for me
is relevant.
Is very relevant,
the right decision.
And I am very, very grateful that I took that decision.
All right.
Yeah.
So now let us now tackle the elephant in the room, which is you aspiring for Northern Uganda Youth Member of Parliament 2026, 2031. With this history that you've given us, from walking us through from, of course, born in 1996, your experience of walking from the outskirts of Gulu to town to, of course, avoid being abducted, of course, being born in a wartime Northern Uganda, and then your primary education journey in Bishop Angelo Negri Primary School. Of course, the influence and the influence of the church, but also your family in instilling values in you, but also the support the church gave you in terms of pushing you through primary education and halfway of your secondary education. And later on, we see you also being involved in a leadership journey, which is peculiar.
Yeah.
You start with of course, captain of your football team in your primary, in your O-level. Later on, we see you dom father, we see you transition to Chief Justice. You come to campus, you lose your first election. Then later on, you now progress, and here we are, National Youth Council, about to step down now, aspiring for a bigger office.
Yeah.
But as we get to that, we're just going to go for a short break and get to the big elephant in the room and dissect it further and understand why you're the choice for the people.
Thank you. Yeah.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Dear viewers, welcome back from that break. Just before we went into the break, we have been speaking to Honorable Kidega Moses. And we are getting an account into his journey, his leadership journey, and quite an interesting one, I must say. A journey that one would wonder, why would someone opt for all those positions that he has gone for? And then today he wants to represent the young people of Northern Uganda in the Parliament of 2026-2031. Just let's get back to it, Moses Kidega. Just before we went into the break, we had a very robust account of your journey from primary, for your childhood journey, primary education journey, secondary education, right until university, even went into your second degree. And now we are here seated with you. Even before we go into your inspirations for this position, you also served as a moderator on here on Civic Space TV. And that's a journey I also, it's good for us to quickly look at. And then we now come into understanding, because your journey is unique. Your slogan says, those from among us, a common person for the common people.
Yeah.
And your journey entirely depicts that.
Yeah.
You also say hashtag hustlers now.
now.
So Moses, let's understand why the slogan, but also your journey on Civic Space TV.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Before I get there, allow me to make an account of my time in office before I forget.
In NYC.
In the NYC.
Please do.
I think for the time we have served in the Youth Council, we have managed to do some things and the things we have failed on. Leadership is not perfect. You will face challenges. As an institution, we managed to do 1, 2, 3, 4 things. One is, in terms of institutional capacity building, we managed to get the budget of the Youth Council from 2 billion to 4 billion. But as we speak today, the rationalization and merge of government agencies now took us even to a worse position than we found the issue of the budget of the Youth Council. But the advocacy is still going on, and we hope that the budget, now in this coming financial year, the budget of the Youth Council has again been reinstated to 4 billion. But for the past 2 financial years, there has actually not been that much. 2 is that we managed to do a facelift on the institution. We joined the Youth Council when the Youth Council was more about the members of the Youth Council and not about the youth who actually should be benefiting from the leadership of the Youth Council. So we did a facelift, and most of our programming incorporated more of the ordinary youth and the youth who are not part of the structures of leadership to be a part of our activity, to be a part of our programming, and therefore taking the Youth Council to the most ordinary person out there. The third is that the budget increment allowed us to now begin offering support to the district youth councils, because the work of the youth council is done at the lowest level possible, which is the district. It's where the programs such as the parish development model, the youth livelihood program, the youth capital venture fund, and most of these youth-centered government programs are monitored. So we thought that since now we have a budget increment, we began to support district youth councils. For the first time in the history of the Youth Council, there is no youth council that has managed to pick money from its own budget to send to districts. So we did that for the first financial year when the budget was increased, but then for the second financial year, we could not do it because our budget, again, owing to the merger, was cut off by 80%. But also a third is that we managed to do advocacy, and more so in terms of, for example, the parish development model, which is government's 5-year flagship program. At the inception of it, did not have an affirmative action for young people. The 30% that we speak about today in the parish development model was as a result of the advocacy of the National Youth Council. And of course, all the media engagements and all the letters are still there up to date. The efforts that we made to cause the Ministry of Local Government to consider an affirmative action for young people. But also, as an institution, we have managed to successfully identify and deploy cadres or youth leaders of the NYC as deputy RDCs and some as full RDCs. It was through the Youth Council's recommendation, and they got deployed. But also, lastly, before I move on, is on the issue of education. We have managed to get the Ministry of Education to consider an increase in the capitation grant for the UPE and USE students, because right now it's at 6,300, but we have managed to convince the Ministry of Education to consider an 100% increment. Now that is from the institution. At a personal level, as Labour Affairs Secretary, the things I did in my own docket, on top of what I've already mentioned, is that I held the first ever Labour conference that brought together stakeholders, those in the employment industry, those in academia, and we had a discussion, and we came up with a paper that has recommendations whereby we advanced them to the different stakeholders, and we hope that along the way we shall begin to witness meaningful change. But also I managed to successfully, under my office, to get the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Authority to enact or to bring in place regulations that create a reservation scheme for youth-led businesses. So today as we speak, a young person who has a business and can supply government to a tune of 10 million, that project or that contract is preserved for the young people at local government level. For national level, if a young person has a business that can do a contracting of 100 million, that contract of government, of procurement or of disposal is reserved for a youth-led business. That, I would proudly say, was a tremendous achievement for me. And of course, the documentation is there when we held our first engagement at PPD, and we invited various stakeholders. But also, I've managed to contribute in terms of mentorship. You mentioned the Youth Roundtable. I began to moderate that show when we were sitting at
the tree at the office.
At a mango tree under CCG. Today, this show is being had in a very exclusive and beautiful boardroom. It took time of commitment, of resilience, of putting in time and effort. But also in so doing, we have mentored young people. There are young people who today have the confidence to speak to media, the confidence to engage with their peers, but also the confidence to now engage people who they would not have engaged if we had not given them the chance for mentorship on the Youth Roundtable. That I did at a personal level. But also, lastly, what I did was to ensure that the skilling hubs that government has put in place, the 20 of them, at least in my 4 years in office, I have visited, I think, 17 or 16. And not just visited, but, and of course the evidence is there, is that you visit, you ascertain whether the courses that government says are being offered are actually being offered. Are there are there efficient facilities to allow the young people actually partake successfully of these courses? So that and therein there is a report that we have made. And then lastly, I think we have championed the opening of the Youth Leaders Circle that we think should be at regional level. And now we are in the process of having discussions around how do we get the first commitment of financing towards the Youth Leaders Circle at sub-regional level. I think that and much more is, to me, an account of what we're able to do, but also advocacy generally. I don't know how many times I've appeared on TV speaking about, be it unemployment, be it on matters of the young people generally. And each time an issue has come up, we have made our voices heard. And I think that has gone a long way in terms of influencing government policy. I think that is for the accountability. You asked on the aspect of why now, the slogan, and why hustlers and why the common people. Is that if you look at my track record and my journey from childhood to being a teenager to now being an adult, is that I am a hustler and I'm a common person. I have hustled to go to school, I have hustled to access education. The church has been my biggest donor in terms of education, but also I've told you that at the point when the church withdrew in my senior 3, senior 4, it became very difficult, right? I remember this particular morning when my mom put us on a bus from Gulu to Lira to meet Father Cosmas. Father Cosmas was the former parish priest of Holy Rosary and had now been moved to Lira Diocese. But because we had been gotten off the church's scholarship, my mom thought maybe we could go and plead. I remember we went to Father Cosmas, we spent 2 days, but it was all futile. So that journey, but also going back to accessing UPE in Lakwana Primary School, that journey of resilience, I would say I'm a hustler and I'm a common person. But also I have not mentioned to you that because when things became difficult in senior 4, in my VAC, I worked in a portion mill. I worked in a portion mill to get something to eat, but also I had now begun to see that my secondary school advanced level will not be as simple. So I worked at a portion mill, but then later on I worked as a market vendor with my mom. My mom was a market vendor, but now she has ever since retired and left Gulu main market and now gone to the village. But in the period when she was still there, because we knew that now things are not easy, we now must be able to work.
I think I can testify to that because your mom was also, she was commonly referred to as Main Moss.
Main Moss, yes.
And I remember as a kid, they used to come to my mom's shop to buy clothes for Christmas. so I definitely know the hustler journey and the hustler story, which informs the humble beginnings, the humble background, but also it reflects that this is just not for the show.
No.
The struggles that the ordinary person goes through, we have gone through them.
Yeah.
And we have experienced them. And the ability that God has granted us, the ability to speak, the ability to influence change, and the ability to put the influence that we have put forward into action is what we are on at the moment. Absolutely. And that is where you come in as you being an aspirant for the Northern Uganda Youth Member of Parliament, which goes without saying, it is a position as an individual. I would say, my brother, go for it, because I know it is not a journey that not everyone else thinks it would be easy.
Yeah.
If we got a Kidega of 1996, we used to move from the outskirts of Gulu to come to split in town,
to the town,
that you're going to run for Northern Uganda Youth Member of Parliament.
Never would I have ever
would
imagined.
we have thought of so?
Never would I have imagined.
So that justifies your slogan. And that is why I think if someone is making a decision on that day, you're actually from among us.
Yeah.
And you signify our story. But now the other thing, the National Resistance Movement. A party that many young people would say, if you want to win youth elections, that is the party you need to go for, because we have seen over the years people win on the ticket of the National Resistance Movement. And you come off because your previous submissions, you greatly hailed the National Resistance Movement in terms of the peace that they brought to the region, among others. But on a personal level, let's understand your reasons, because we now know why the slogan. Yeah. We know why exactly you are coming. We know why, of course, you got the hashtag of hustlers, those from among us. We have understood that. But why the National Resistance Movement?
Fantastic. All right. Just, you forgot to mention one thing. Yeah. Hustler, one, I was a market vendor with my mom. Yeah. Two, in my senior 4, I worked at a posho mill, Ichuma. The posho mill is now owned by, I think, the son to General Tema. I worked there. As, of course, because I had gone to school, they gave me a bit of a higher role, but still I was in the posho mill, measuring posho and things like that. I made liquid soap for a living in my senior 6 vacation, and saved and made savings out of it. I taught myself how to make liquid soap, and I would make liquid soap and supply it to hotels and save the money to prepare me for university education. But I mean, thank God I got a government scholarship, so that money, But that is my hustler journey, and no wonder. I seek to represent the most ordinary young person and my fellow hustlers. So why the NRM? I think for me, the NRM to some of us is a personal thing, because the ideology of the party notwithstanding, like the party is all about what are the interests of the people. It's not about who you are, where you come from. Actually, West Nile, Karamojong, Muganda, whatever it is, we don't care about that. We care about the what. If there's a good road, it won't matter what tribe you are. It won't matter what religion you are. If there's a good hospital, if we have a seed school at every sub-county, it won't matter what party you belong to. It won't matter what tribe or what religion you are. So that is the first thing, the politics of interest against the politics of identity that parties like UPC and parties like DP had practiced in the past. You know that DP is largely Catholic, all right, whereas UPC was largely Anglican.
But someone will also say the NRM right now is also leaning on tribal lines, because in terms of the appointments, I wouldn't want us to go on that lane.
Yeah, true. But you see, fast forward is the contribution that the NRM brings in restoring peace and stability. For someone like me, who spent the first years of his childhood walking barefoot from the outskirts of Gulu to this town center, appreciates what peace and security is. Restoring that belief that we are safe, to me, is something that I take very personal. But also, look at what the NRM has done over time. Today, we have 6,000 kilometers of tarmac across the country. When the NRM took over power, we were at a mere, maybe, I don't know, 400, 500, now we're at 8,000. Today, Uganda generates over 2,000 megawatts of hydroelectric power, to the extent that now we even supply our neighbors with hydroelectric power. As we speak today, the NRM took over leadership when we had 1 public university. Today there are 24 across the country. The NRM took over leadership when we did not have universal primary education. Today, 10 million children join UPE. Unfortunately, only 3 million join USE. Now, we should ask ourselves, where are the 6 million in between? Where did they get lost from? And that's where our leadership comes in. When the NRM took over power, the stability in the region, Lakwena, ADF, LRA, today, the UPDF, because of its Pan-African ideology, has created stability in the region. You know of our participation as the UPDF in MONUSCO that is Somalia. You know what we are doing. AMISON is Somalia, MONUSCO is DRC Congo. You know what we are doing there. You know how we are dealing with transnational terrorism today, the ADF, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, and all these other terrorist groups, and how the NRM has stabilized not just the country, but the region as well.
So having understood that broader aspect of the NRM, now I want to bring this conversation down to the ordinary person.
So you are now convinced about the NRM?
I'm not entirely.
To be convinced.
But I'm not supposed to choose sides anyway, because I will still ask you. You were of course in the armpits of the church.
Yeah.
And of course you told us that you went to UPE. But today we have people opting not to go to UPE and USC because of the quality. Yeah. But we shall come to that, because that is in your manifesto.
Absolutely.
In terms of quality. That is why I'm not asking you these questions. That the NRM has made all these major contributions, irrespective of its shortfalls as well. As a young man, a young girl, a lady, a gentleman in northern Uganda, from Mvura to Gulu to Kitgum down to Moroto, who come that day in August, they are looking for their youth member of parliament to represent their views, not just to legislate, but also to go there, speak, but also be in position to gather support to come and help them.
Yeah.
We are not looking at someone who just comes and speaks, articulates issues, and at the end of the day forgets that the person who is supposed to be greatly affected is us, the young people. Our region, northern Uganda, is characterized as amongst the poorest in the country. We are grappling with not only poverty, we are grappling with huge levels of disease, unemployment. We are grappling with high levels of insecurity that is rising in regards to rape, defilement, among others, and also domestic violence. And of course, we're also dealing with post-traumatic stress that happened, of course, 20 years down the road after the LRA insurgency. We are having all these issues. What are your plans in trying to address these issues? I know you'll be a legislator with a mandate, sole mandate of legislation, oversight, all those. What are your plans for the young people of northern Uganda?
Absolutely. So we seek the NRM ticket for those reasons and much more. But also the NRM, we hope that we can consolidate the gains of the NRM and the revolution of President Museveni and take forward this country. But also my running for Youth MP is timely, because Uganda's National Development Plan 4 is about transforming the economy tenfold from a 5 billion to a 50 billion US dollar economy. So, and I think that's where strategic leadership comes in. Now, I've told you all these things about the NRM. Now, what are my plans? My plans are to support the gains already made, but also introduce new ideas on how best the NRM can continuously serve Ugandans, and most of those young people in the northern region.
So let's start with directly education.
Education. Our plan is twofold. We think that government has, owing to the structural adjustment programs of the early 1990s, government went so quickly into the whole liberalization idea. And we ended up privatizing some of the most crucial sectors like education. Today, the most quality education is actually found in the private sector. Government schools or government-aided schools have fallen short in terms of offering quality education. It means that majority of the population are now running to the private sector, and because the demand is so much in the private sector, the cost of education can only go higher. So two things need to be done. One, government should be able to reinvest, and I mean actual investment, into the education sector. Later on, I'll talk about healthcare, and I'll talk about the Abuja declaration of 15%. But on education, I think that government needs to intentionally inject more money, more so in universal primary education and universal primary education. If these two education systems are working, they have a quality, any ordinary Ugandan will feel comfortable taking their child to that particular school, and they will be able to reduce the demand in the private sector, and therefore force the price of the cost of education to come low. All right? I think I've showed you how schematically that can be done. Drake, today as we speak, the NRM has created a seed school in every sub-county. All right? There is, at every parish, there is a primary school. At every sub-county, there's a secondary school. At every district, in Uganda today, there's a technical school. But what is the quality? Why aren't students enrolling to these government institutions? It's because of lack of quality. I mentioned earlier on that government is only investing, I think, 6,300 per term.
Yeah.
That is small money, all right? We need to push government, and we should make a case for education, whereby government considers education as a top priority. Because once you take off education, you take off healthcare, then people can now invest their surplus income into the money economy. And that's why the 39% that we want to put in to get into the money economy, now that happens much more quicker because you've taken away the burden of some of the socio-economic services. So education, that is one. But also we think that we need a regulation that even if we work or address the issue of quality of UPE and USE, it is not a guarantee that the price of school fees will drop down from the private sector. No. So we need actually a law that puts a cap, a strong regulation on private sector, that you cannot charge school fees beyond this amount of money. There should be a cap, all right, that is set by the Ministry of Education. But right now, it is open. Schools charge any amount of money. There is extortion. There is, I mean, we cannot continue like that, all right. Thirdly, on education is we think there is need for us to reinvest in infrastructure. Some of these schools that were created traditionally have lost their pride. We need to reinvest in them, and someone should not find the need to come to St. Mary's College Kisubi because there is Laibi College in Gulu. Someone should not find the need to go to Ntare because there is Boroboro or there is Lango College in Lira. Someone should not feel the need to come because there is Mvara SS in Arua, or there is Moroto High. We need to recreate and give a better perspective and infrastructure in these traditional schools so that our young people don't find the need to leave the region to come and find education elsewhere. When we do that, then we are creating a community of people who appreciate the values of their community, but also respect that they can attain education from where they are.
Interesting.
Lastly, on education, Drake, is on the issue of the skilling. There's an issue of the skilling gap, what we get from school vis-a-vis what is needed in the job market.
Exactly. Now that's what I was going to ask you, the question of unemployment and innovation.
Yeah.
You served as the Secretary for Labour Affairs in the National Youth Council, and you were in position to visit all these skilling hubs across the country. Now let us, of course, understand, because if we have the education, let's say, in your tenure in office, in position to achieve most of these things that you talk about, then definitely we need to sort out the unemployment question, but also be in position to have young people who are innovative, that not only seek employment, but create employment within itself. So let us expound on the unemployment and innovation, cognizant of the fact that the region is grappling with high levels of unemployment, but also grappling with, basically high levels of unemployment, but poverty at the same time.
Fantastic, Drake. So the skilling centers, the 20 zonal skilling centers established by government are working. The challenge that I found out is that the graduates are not being able to get support in terms of graduation startup kits. That a young person comes, attends the education, but they leave as they came. Government should have a plan on transition into the job market, transition into a self-sustaining and a self-relying, skilled young person trained by government of Uganda. So there should be a small package, a small startup kit for them, so that these skills don't go to waste. But the challenge is that now they're attaining these good skills, they can make handbags, they can make shoes, but they don't lack the machines, they don't lack the kits to begin doing this on their own. That is one issue. The second issue that we discovered is that every district sends 24 young people for every academic intake. These skilling centers are now beginning to get overpopulated. Now, for example, in West Nile, you have only 2 skilling centers, one in Ajumani, the other in Zombo. West Nile has 13 districts and 2 municipalities. How are all these districts going to feed off from just 2 skilling hubs? So there's overpopulation, the demand is higher. So there's need for government to actually invest in more of these skilling centers, more so in the northern region. For example, in Acholi, there's only one. So you can see that these cannot deal with the demand that is rising. But also, I forgot to mention that on advocacy with education, we need to advocate for affirmative action in terms of government scholarships to the northern region. That you have people who go to school, qualify, but the Equal Opportunities report shows us that the level of young people getting government scholarship from the northern region is very, very low, at a meager, I think, 18%. So we need to have an advocacy plan that government needs to create an affirmative action for government scholarships for people or students from the northern region, because the circumstances under which these two people are studying are different. So we cannot expect the same standard for a student of St. Mary's College Kisubi as that of St. Joseph's College Laibi. So affirmative action is required. But also, lastly on education, I forgot, the district quota system needs to be reviewed. For now, it is not benefiting the actual needy people. Because you find a young person comes and studies in Kampala, then registers to sit UACE in the village. So the student who has actually attained education up country will of course not perform as a child who has attained education here in Kampala. But they will sit for the same exam, and it will be assumed that they're in the same school. So the student who actually needs that scholarship, who went to school in Lakwana, then misses out because a student came and registered from their school, from Kampala. So that there is a loophole there that we must fix. But Drake, just not to derail you, let's go back to unemployment. The issue of unemployment, first of all, is not unique to Uganda as a country. It's a continental and global issue.
True.
Now, what is the solution? We need to intentionally invest in the private sector. Government can only employ 6,000 people, or a meager 6,500. The jobs that are going to be created should come from the private sector. Government should be intentional about how much money we are going to invest in Uganda Development Bank, because what China is doing is that they are making credit very affordable. Chinese get loans at 0% and come and invest it here in Uganda. Whereas for us here, the commercial banks give loans at 24%, Drake. Which businessman is going to be able to get that loan, invest it, enterprise, and repay back in time?
More so a young person.
More so a young person.
Yeah.
It's unthinkable. So we government must put intentional effort to increase the money they put to Uganda Development Bank. Let the Mukwanos of today have access to that 1 billion, that 2 billion, invest it in their enterprises, expand and create more jobs. But also, the young entrepreneurs who are also trying to enterprise, what is government doing for them? The question of incentives. Why can government incentivize some of these required facilities like electricity, like water, so that these young entrepreneurs don't choke on the cost of production? What is government doing on the issue of access to market for the produce? How far have we gone with the EAC treaty and the customs duty? All right?
Yeah.
We need to be more strategic. But bottom line for me is develop the private sector, invest in private sector, you will expand and create more jobs. But also the young people who want to access credit, avail for them an effective system. And thankful to the NRM is that we have the parish development model, a Myoga, youth livelihood program. But now the issue is this is still a revolving fund. So young people need to be able to have the requisite financial literacy skills. There should be perhaps a small business incubation hub, in that before they get the money, they know that, okay, this is how I have to repay back, so that they don't misuse the money, and therefore government finding itself conflicted whether they should recapitalize the youth livelihood program or not. But lastly, on unemployment, is on the innovation that you asked me about. You know that today there is business process, or what? BPOs. The BPOs today, whereby you don't need to be in America to work for an American company. That is all business process outsourcing. Yes, outsourcing. But the BPO in Uganda is not working. Majority of Kenyans today don't need to go to the USA to work for USA companies. They just sit there in Kenya.
I think we should just use easy terms like remote work.
Remote work. Remotely. Yeah. All right? But also, still on unemployment, we should make employment attractive. Today, Uganda is largely an agriculture economy. But have we made agriculture attractive? Agriculture is portrayed as a hoe, as a tractor. Yet agriculture has an entire value chain in it. There is salesman, there is value addition, there is marketing, there is all those things. But agriculture is portrayed as a hoe and a wreck. So we need to be able to also have a mindset transition amongst our people, all right? But also, lastly on unemployment, is that the issue of education, which I've mentioned, the skill gap, is also a huge factor.
Okay.
We are still stuck with the colonial curriculum.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a transition, but I think much more needs to be done, and we should move much more quicker.
So let's say Kidega Moses Ogenrwot is in office. You make mention in your manifesto institutional capacity building that you will set up a regional office whereby young people can easily access you at whatever point, be it in Arua, be it in Gulu, be it in Moroto. So how does this institutional capacity building work, and how does it fit within the other two areas of education and unemployment and innovation work?
Sure. So how does it work is that first and foremost, I have run a business, restaurant, 2 times. One as a university student. Those who were in Chikoni know where Manchis was, with my, of course, 2 other friends. But also, still, at some point last 2 years ago, I again ran a business. But I can assure you, my businesses have had to close because of taxation and because of the so many demands and financial obligations that I have to meet. Now, we intend to put in place the startup bill, that if a young person has a business, government should give them a period of 12 months to operate without being able to commit to their financial obligations. When the businesses are now thriving, they've seen their first birthday, they're self-sustaining, then government can come and say, okay, now you can pay PAYE, now you can pay KCCA tax. But if these taxes are there immediately, believe me, young people who are trying to enterprise will not thrive. But also, the digital economy is being challenged by the 18% tax on data. We need to make, data is the new oil of today. Data is the new oil. And for this 4th industrial revolution, we cannot be left behind by not having accessible and affordable internet. Now to move to institutional capacity building. The Youth MP office has for so long been a dominant office because the Youth MP moves with the office wherever he is. And we are saying, no, let the Youth MP office be an actual office. Let us put up regional Youth MP offices in Gulu, in Lira, in Arua, in Moroto. Let the issues of the sub-region be processed quickly. There are some issues that can be addressed at sub-regional level that might not need me. There are concerns because when you put an office, it will have an office attendant. So first of all, we are creating employment. But also, we are being able to make the office functional. The office should not be about the office bearer of Kidega Moses. No, there should be an office attendant. Okay, what issue is it? Okay, can we handle it at this level? If not, let us process it for legislation so that the office is functional. But also, I mentioned that we intend to open the Youth Leaders Circle. This circle will be run in the sub-regional level. But also, we hope that the first commitment to the circle will be the money that government gives to MPs to buy the cars. That 200 million, I want to commit 30 million each.
This is on camera. We shall account you for that.
30 million to the Youth Leaders Circle at sub-regional level to have them up and running. Then maybe once they are performing well, government can pick interest in these Youth Leaders Circles and then finance it beyond the initial 30 million that we would have put in it. Because the youth leaders also must be able to have something that they can be able to access credit and do business and also grow their own enterprise. But also in terms of institutional capacity building is that for so long, the challenge with the Youth Council around the budgeting is because there is no independent vote in Parliament. As Member of Parliament, I know that. And I know that the Youth Council, the Youth Councillors, UNSA, the Youth League, all these institutions deserves an independent vote in parliament, whereby they don't squat under any ministry. The NRM Youth League should not be squatting under the secretariat. They should have an independent support that comes under the Political Parties and Organizations Act. All right? The UNSA should not squat under Ministry of Education. They should have an independent vote that comes straight from Parliament to their account. The Youth Council, the Youth Councillors, all right? They should not squat under the Ministry of Local Government. They should have an independent vote that supports their activities. All that is institutional capacity building. You'd ask me why? Because we believe that once the institutions are up and running, then they can function, they can serve the young people, and they can be able to then do what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then lastly, in your manifesto, you talk about, of course, sexual reproductive health rights. So in the region, we are seeing high rates of dropout of girls because, of course, they cannot access or afford sanitary towels. So how is this an important aspect to your manifesto, and how do you intend to achieve so?
Absolutely. 6,000 girls drop out every year because they cannot afford a sanitary towel. The level of gender-based violence that is perpetrated against the young girls down there, affecting their esteem and affecting their general livelihood, is a lived reality. The girls who are made fun of and are stigmatized because of their menstrual hygiene and are forced to stay away from school and therefore eventually dropping out is a lived reality. The social-cultural biases against young girls leading to teenage pregnancies, leading to all these challenges and the structural barriers at that level are a lived reality, Drake. We need to have a plan for the young girls. And my plan is that first, we need to be able to keep them in school. If you keep a girl in school, you save her from 10 men who would be outside there trying to get a hold of her as she's either walking back home or as she's languishing in the village. So the first step is keep her in school for her teenage years. And how do you do that? Make education affordable, that we have already discussed. 2 is have a program which I intend to champion, a mandatory distribution of reusable sanitary pads. A girl should never feel stigmatized because of their natural evolvement into a woman. No, they should be supported in this transformation journey of theirs. They should be, we should hold their hands and through legislation. Why should a girl at 16 years be married? Because the society believes that, children can get married at that age. Why should we have female genital mutilation? Because the Sabini believes so. No, we need to restore dignity in the lives of these young girls and give them a proper dignifying life and a chance at growth, a chance at being the Michelle Obamas, a chance at being the Oprah Winfrey, a chance at being the Winnie Kizas of today, the chance at being Winnie Kiza Byanyima of today. We need to install in them that belief. But it goes back to addressing the issues that keep them out of school and issues that affect their esteem.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It has been nice having you on the show. Listening to your 4-pronged manifesto and how it interlinks, interjects each other, but also how it reflects the actual challenges we're facing as a region. For someone who is watching, come the day, I think you would know the right choice to make. And to you, my brother, it has been nice having you. Maybe your final words as we get to the end of the show.
My final words is to you, first of all, Drake. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure. I have seen you grow in your role as a moderator, and I think you're doing fantastically well. I saw you the first time you appeared on set, and seeing you today, I think you've grown tremendously. You've grown tremendously, and of course, I thank you for being diligent, and I thank, of course, CCG for the opportunity and allowing me to air out my journey. And perhaps the caption of this video maybe will be "From market vendor to running for Northern Uganda."
It's actually a success story that we shall live to tell.
From market vendor to running for Northern Uganda Youth Member of Parliament. To me, if you had asked me 20 years ago that there will come a time where you'll sit on set and tell the country about your aspirations and your journey and your dream of being Youth Member of Parliament, never would I have imagined, even in the wildest of my dreams. I know. But I believe Uganda is now a land of possibility, and we can all dream. So my dream of being youth MP is dependent on the Youth League electorate that is set to cast their vote in the primary election come August. You've heard my story. You know what I am set forward to do. You know what I can do, what I've been able to do, but also importantly is what we can do together. I'm here to offer you a clarion call and request that you consider rallying behind me as your Northern Uganda Youth Member of Parliament. And I know together, the hustlers and the common people, we will transform our region and give hope and restore a belief that the future is possible for all of us. That you don't need to come from a particular family to be youth MP. You don't need to have a huge chunks of money to be youth MP. I know obviously our politics has been commercialized, and we forgot to talk about that. Just maybe in 2 minutes. Our politics is highly commercialized, and that has affected even the quality of legislation, the quality of members of parliament, and the quality of leaders generally. So as we conclude, I will ask and beseech my electorate not to consider factors such as money. Go for the competence of an individual, the quality of an individual. Because eventually the 5 years that you will have, the choice is yours, whether you will be stuck with a progressive leader with a tested, proven and trusted track record, or you will vote basing on mere factors of, oh, I got A, B, C, D, I got this small benefit, which by the way, cannot even impact your life for 1 or 2 days. That 100,000, that 50,000 will not change your life. But the 5 years, you'll be stuck with a progressive or a non-progressive leader. So the choice is yours. But I think lastly is that on commercialization of politics is that we must be able to recreate the narrative. All right, politicians are paid too much money in Uganda. Yeah, we need to begin by cutting by half the salary of members of parliament, so that we make politics less attractive for those who see it as a business venture, but attract those who want to come and serve and offer transformation to the lives of their people. And just like you remember the UK Minister of Education, Cameron, who resigned from being Minister of Education and went back to writing a column in the UK Journal because the money he was getting as Minister of Education was way less than the money he was getting as a private practitioner or as a writer. So I think we need to make professionals and professional life much more attractive. A teacher should be able to earn more money than a politician, a doctor. Why is a politician who is only paid to go and speak and to talk be paid more money than a teacher who is influencing the lives of people,
the next generation,
than a doctor who is saving lives of people? Why? So we need to decommercialize politics, and it starts by making the right choices. And of course, the young people, I've said it all, and I know come August, you will make the right choice. You'll choose a fellow hustler. You'll choose a fellow common person to represent you because they appreciate you, they know what you go through, and they embody what you could become. Let's choose the hustlers, let's choose the common people, and we will make Northern Uganda work for all of us and great again. I thank you.
For our default. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
To our viewers out there, thank you very much for religiously following. But allow me first and foremost say thank you to the Center for Constitutional Governance for this wonderful episode that is airing on Civic Space TV. We first of all get to listen from those from among us. He has been with us here at Civic Space TV. He has been with us here at the Center for Constitutional Governance. We have heard his story. And he's an aspirant for the Northern Uganda Youth Member of Parliament 2026-2031. His name is Kidega Moses Ogenrwot. But above all dreams can come true and all dreams are valid. We have heard the story from Kidega Moses, a young man who hails from Northern Uganda, then turbulent Northern Uganda, and now he's here from vending in the market to someone who wants to represent the views of you, the ordinary person on the floor of Parliament. But it's very interesting to see that humble beginnings can also at times make very, very important, but also very resolved, but outspoken leaders such as himself. So this is a very big thank you to Civic Space TV and Center for Constitutional Governance for always offering a platform for young people who are vibrant and willing to offer change to their community. But also to you, our dear esteemed viewers, for always watching and following. You can get more of these conversations on our YouTube channel at Civic Space TV, on our various social media channels. But also you can follow us as well. Mine is Draconen on Twitter, but also on LinkedIn. See you next time. It has been wonderful. and it's been brilliant having you on the show. Bye-bye.
Thank you.